Thanks for joining us. Thanks for coming out. I'm their town supervisor, Nick D'Alessandro. And tonight we're hosting our county executive, Marc Molinaro. He's doing his town hall forums series throughout the county. He has done over 100 of them to date since he has become our county executive. And it's just a way to have a nice conversation with our county executive about ideas and concerns that you have that are going on in our county. I'd like to thank our Deputy Supervisor Peter Cassidy and Town Councilman Tom Franco for coming. And why don't we get started?
Fine by me. It's okay with you. Thanks, everybody. So we should, you really should extend some appreciation to the town supervisor and the town board. He knows this. We don't like him at all. To the town of East Fishkill as an institution, right, government, is well respected across the county, and our relationship with the town board and town supervisor has been tremendous, in particular in the area of economic growth. They have been really innovative in addressing what could otherwise be in other communities, in fact, other communities across the state, a devastating, years ago, but devastating loss of employment. That could have turned ultimately into a constant situation of sort of negative economic activity. But thanks to innovative zoning codes, some investment in infrastructure, and partnership with really both the county and the state, the town of East Fishkill has really been a powerhouse economically in Dutchess County. And I mean this sincerely, that really does go to the town board's willingness to be creative and advocate for your constituents. So another round of applause for them. I really appreciate it. And I really do. Now, some of you know, and actually I think I might be related to a couple of you here, but you know that part of my father's family actually is from East Fishkill, Stormville in particular, and I can tell you that we've had probably 6 or 7 of those 100-plus town hall meetings here, usually at town hall. We couldn't make that work tonight, but I'm thrilled to be back for another town hall forum. I want to acknowledge that there are a couple other county officials who are here. I think it's relatively public that one of the longest serving and perhaps most respected members of the county legislature has decided to retire this year. And I, in fact, served with her, but she's a wonderful woman and a great representative, and that's Marge Horton, who's here with us. They've got me wired up. If I bend over, I may pop. I don't know. I don't want. Otherwise, I'd be more polite. I want to acknowledge that your other legislators are here as well. Although, where did he go? Oh, there he is. You likely know Chair of the Budget, Finance, and Personnel Committee, Legislator John Metzger. And the Assistant Majority Leader, Legislator Donna Bollner, is here as well. Do you have you want to mention what you have? Oh, you already did? Okay. So also joining us today is a good friend of mine, somebody that I have worked with in the county legislature. I admire a great deal. I have to tell you, I know a little bit of something about other elected officials across the state. This is perhaps the most humble and probably brightest elected official among them in the state of New York, and that's your county clerk, Brad Kendall, who is here as well. Brad Kendall knows that every time I say Brad Kendall, he gives me $5. So far, Brad Kendall owes me $20. But I'm thrilled to be back. Let me tell you a little bit about why we hold these. I want to give you a little bit of background of the state of the county in quotes, and then just open it up for questions. My goal is to be relatively done in an hour. That's a relative statement, but let's see if we can do that. As Nick mentioned, we've had over 100 town hall meetings since I became county executive. I believe in them. I think it's valuable and important, both for us to be able to offer you some information about what's going on with your government, but more importantly, it gives you a chance to ask us questions. And I'm grateful that there are several representatives from Dutchess County government departments here today. So if there's a question that is one I don't want to answer, I'll make them answer it. So a number of us are here to try to answer your questions. I think it is that important. Many of you likely know that I began my service in public office as a 19-year-old in the village of Tivoli. There are more people in this room than lived in the village, but 1,300 residents, Tivoli, the northwest corner of Dutchess County. And when you serve in village government, and it's a little bit closer than town government, but Nick knows. If you want a pizza and a complaint, you go to Nick. But when you're a village mayor, you're kind of on the front line all the time. And residents know what the mayor is, and whether they know what layer of government they need to turn to, they often turn to the mayor to ask questions. So I learned very early on that local government in particular is very personal. In that, quite frankly, and this may be the only time you hear me say the name of the two parties, it's also not terribly partisan. When the roof leaks at Village Hall, it leaks on Republicans and Democrats, and our job is just to fix the roof, not blame somebody for why it's leaking. We'll leave that to Albany and Washington. But I learned in village government how valuable it is to be responsive and accountable. And also, you learn in village government, you can't hide from people. So at the end of the day, staying close with those you represent, whether you agree or not, is invaluable. It is that important. So fast forward, was elected in '95 to serve as mayor of Tivoli for 12 years. Fast forward to 2012, I became your 7th county executive, also the youngest. I just like to say that. It reminds me that I have a very long history of being young. So in 2012, became county executive and followed Bill Steinhaus, who had served for 20 years. At the beginning of every calendar year, the county executive is required to deliver to the legislature the activities of county government for the prior year and a focus on what services or programs would be engaged in the coming year. That became the state of the county. Like the state of the state or the state of the union is sort of the chief executive, we deliver to the legislature our agenda for the coming year. So in this case, 2019, I did so at the end of February to 500 of my closest friends at the Culinary Institute of America. And as Brad knows, it's a quick hour, but it's an hour. And there's no questions then, right? So subsequent to holding the State of the County address, we like to have a series of town hall meetings to get out into the community and talk a little bit about the state of the county and then enable you to ask questions. The other time we do this is around budget time, and I'm actually kind of happy to be talking budget time because yesterday we released the county's year-end report from last year. I'd like to talk about our fiscal condition a little bit. I'll do that with the slides so that I don't get tied up and keep you too long. But by November 1st of every year, the county executive is required to present to the legislature the proposed budget for the next year. It's interesting, right? Because unlike businesses who can kind of make calculated decisions throughout the year as it relates to budgets and residents, once a year we go to the public and say, here's our budget for the next 12 months. We better hope we get it right. And there's a lot of room, certainly within those 12 months, but the basics are set by December 1st of every year. But when I release that budget prior to November 1st, we then have a series of town hall meetings where we get out into the community. So let's talk a little bit about the state of the county. If you can all see it, I don't know if I'll be in the way half the time. But in 2019, we were able to provide the 5th consecutive year of county property tax levy cuts. Now that's good news for everybody. I offer that but with this caveat. County property taxes represent only about 11% of what you pay in property taxes. New York State, of course, numbers of layers of government. County government in some towns is a little bit less than towns, and some towns is a little bit more than towns. I don't know where we are with you, but we're about 11% of your property tax bill. The overwhelming majority of what you pay in property taxes go to school districts, in this case, whether it's Wappingers or Carmel, and I know we have a Carmel school board member here, so that's nice. But county government represents about 11% of your property taxes. For the last 5 years, Dutchess County has been able to provide a property tax levy cut, and for the last 4 years, a property tax rate reduction. We think that's important. Now, this is not seismic reduction, but the truth is if your assessed valuation hadn't changed, right, if you were pretty much steady in your assessed valuation, you were likely to have to pay less today in county government taxation than you did 4 years ago. I don't remember the next slide, so we'll just go right to it. I'll talk a little bit about the financial report now. Because of good fiscal management, Dutchess County has a AA+ bond rating, and I'd like to explain what that is, but also tell you what we reported on yesterday. So, county government get bond rating. The bond rating is like your credit report, right? The higher the number, the better the report. And if you have a high number, those credit card companies will call you and say, we want to give you lots of money and we'll even give you a reduced interest rate. Or, more importantly, if you want to go mortgage or finance for the purchase of a home or some major purchase, right, the better your credit rating, the more likely you are to receive a lower interest rate and a larger line of credit. You're a trusted, we trust you to lend to you, right? The same is true for the bond rating. Governments want a higher bond rating. In our case, Dutchess County has the highest bond rating of any county government in the state of New York. Now, if you go back to 2012 when I took office, we were in the throes of the Great Recession. Many of you will remember that. We still haven't fully rebounded, in particular in assessed valuation. But in 2012, by that time, in the midst of that Great Recession, Dutchess County had seen a 25% reduction in assessed valuation. So 25% of the whole pie had shrunk, or we shrunk by 25%. We had seen about a 70% increase in mental health and social services mandated caseload, so a huge impact on new services. And at the same time, we had seen a bond rating downgrade. We were left with very little savings account. So I came into office in 2012 thinking, well, maybe I should go back to Albany where nobody cares. No. But we hunkered down. We made some important decisions. We consolidated county government, shrunk the workforce, and tried used technology to be more effective and efficient in the delivery of core county services. The first 4 years was rebound. We spent a lot of time making tough decisions. But in the second 4 years of these last 4 years, we really have turned the corner. So the county has replenished its fund balance. We have a good rainy day fund, which is good. It's useful when we have unexpected expenditures, or the state mandates some new cost, or perhaps we need to make a purchase of some kind. In fact, our cash on hand is so good that we stopped borrowing up front. We, in fact, spend the money first and then make borrowing decisions at the end of the year. That's important because we're not paying closing fees and we're not carrying interest rates. We're actually fronting major capital projects with cash as opposed to borrowing it, which, of course, is very, very useful. I think, in fact, in 2018, our debt service was slightly lower than 2017, represents a small portion of Dutchess County's budget. But because of all these changes, we went from a bond rating downgrade to now the highest bond rating of any county in the state of New York, and it's paying off. Because what it says, two things, right, to lenders, they're willing to give us a lower interest rate when we borrow. In fact, just last month, we refinanced a significant amount of county debt, and in doing so, we were able to go from a 3% interest rate to 1.7, 1.8, something of that nature. Now, you probably couldn't get 1.8% on the market, but because of, even with a good credit report, but because of our strong condition, we were able to get that low of an interest rate, saving you about $1 million. I think it's about $800,000. In actual real savings. That we think is important. The other, of course, is we borrow a lot of money. We do. Every day at the end of the year, if we're doing major projects, right, we can't just pay cash for major bridge repair or highway repair. So the fact that we have to borrow annually at a lower interest rate provides us millions upon millions of compounded savings for Dutchess County taxpayers. Now, just so you know, the county's borrowing has remained relatively steady. I think we're about 5% of Dutchess County's constitutional limit. So that means we could borrow 95 points more. We wouldn't. But we've been that way for about 20 years. Our debt is about steady as a relationship to what we are allowed to borrow. Yesterday, we released the year-end report. Dutchess County ended 2018 with a modest surplus, about $200,000. For you and I, it's a lot of money. Within county government, it's a small amount. But what that says is that we didn't overtax you. We didn't take too much out of we take more than we needed out of your pockets. And at the same time, we ended the year with enough that we were able to cover our bills and put a little bit more away in savings. So we ended with a surplus last year. We sustained the county's fund balance, which is useful. And the county airport, which is worth us at least mentioning, when I came into office, was subsidized by you and I by a few $100,000. We were able to cut that subsidy by 70% in 5 years. And last year, the county airport turned a $50,000 profit, which is useful by privatizing some of the operations. All very important, because this all speaks to the county's fiscal condition. And our fiscal condition has never been stronger. When you marry that with some data that I know people don't always like to accept, but when you marry that with 18 consecutive months of job growth, March, in fact, Dutchess County led New York State in new job creation, so 18 consecutive months of job growth, which is for us very good, the lowest unemployment rate in 17 years, and over $4 billion worth of economic growth happening in the county. That's all important because it continues to grow jobs, grow opportunity. In fact, over the last 8 years, we've seen an 8% increase in average wages. Now, that doesn't mean everybody got 8% over those, but as a whole, Dutchess County has been well positioned. Our economic strength today is truly unparalleled, and it really speaks to why we're able to sustain the high bond rating. I got it all in one slide. This is my favorite slide. State legislators don't like it, but if you listen quietly, You can hear Kieran Lawler. He's coaching Little League right up the road. But Kieran understands this. Senator Serino was going to send folks tonight, but she is at an event, United Way event across the river. This slide shows to you what we live with, right? Now, county governments all across the state of New York are like the middlemen or middlewomen, if depending on your perspective. We have to do the things the state requires of us and then the things you expect of us. Well, for us, in some counties a little bit worse than this, but for us, 70% of what we do every day is mandated by Albany. New York, by the way, forces more state spending down onto local property taxpayers than any state in the country. I know that that should surprise you. But for instance, my in-laws, we just visited them in Virginia. In Virginia, most roads are state roads. Most services are provided at the state level, education provided through the state resources. County governments have a limited role. But in this state, they force more down onto the backs of property taxpayers than any state in the country. So what that looks like is this. 70% of what we do mandated by Albany. 70% of our property tax levy mandated by Albany. And 70 cents of every property tax dollar we take from you, and I know you don't give it to us willingly, goes to pay for mandated services. I'm happy to tell you what they are. Some of them have great merit. Most of them are not run efficiently. All of them have significant waste. But this state takes this massive state spending and forces it down onto an acute, a very small and focused property tax base, and that is regressive. What's left? Well, the 30 cents on the dollar is what New York State says is optional. But these are the things you tend to expect from us, right? Like, the optional services of 911 and snow plowing. Those are the things that we don't have to do. But of course, you would probably wake up and say, what the heck are you doing? So Dutchess County provides those things, but we do them with only 30 cents on the dollar, which I think is pretty substantial. Because we have a network of services that is pretty broad, and we're still able to do it for 30 cents on every dollar. Now, if we had it our way, we'd give the 70 cents back to Albany, we'd give you a massive property tax reduction, and we'd keep just the 30 cents. But Albany doesn't do it that way, and we have to continue. When I'm done, I promise. That's. I'm going to guarantee that you won't forget. Why don't you say out loud the topic? I won't answer the question. I'll remember.
He says 70% is mandated by Albany. Governor Cuomo is the governor of New York State.
Yes.
And does any of my money for tax for the school goes, my house property tax goes for an abortion?
Wow. Not for these. Not these dollars.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can we do something to get rid of this guy completely?
Well, I tried. I got your question. I'll get to the end. Let me. Okay. Well, let me get to the end. Let me get to the end. I promise I won't forget your question. So with that, I won't forget your question. I just want to finish the presentation. Okay. So we run county government with those 30 cents on the dollar, and I would suggest to you that that is really the world that we live in. Now, there are a couple areas that I want to focus on that are big issues for Dutchess County, not necessarily unique. The public health crisis of our lifetime is opioid and heroin addiction, in particular, and broadly opioid addiction. And it is taking lives all across the country. It is not unique to Dutchess, but I can tell you last year, 93 individuals lost their lives to drug-related overdoses. In fact, today, more people lose their life to drug addiction overdoses in America than car crashes, first time in our history. Let that sink in for a moment, right? Significant loss of life because of addiction. Now, what Dutchess County is focused on is a comprehensive response, really focused on the illness of addiction, but also enforcement. And through our Breaking Through initiative, we're really trying to help those who are dealing with and living with both addiction and mental health issues. So last year, one of the things we do is train and offer access to Narcan. Last year, we trained over 1,700 individuals in the use of Narcan. I will say up front, there are people, even emergency responders, who say to me, well, how many times are we going to have to administer Narcan? We go to that fellow, we've seen him 5 or 6 times. Well, you know what? We're going to administer Narcan every single time because it's our job to save lives. If you value life, you don't get to pick and choose which ones are important to you. And our response is every day with the ills of addiction, our focus has been to try to save lives. And so you wouldn't say to somebody who's on his 3rd heart attack, well, listen, stop eating hamburgers or I'm not coming to your house. That's not how we do it. So for us, the provision of Narcan is a way that residents can be helpful. Last year at our stabilization center, 3,000 visits. What is that? Dutchess County is the most comprehensive mental health program in the country, bar none. In my estimation, we have been able to train law enforcement in crisis intervention training, mental health first aid. We train teachers and administrators within school districts on social emotional skills. Our SROs in school districts are trained in CIT and mental health first aid. Mobile intervention team, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, mental health folks available, responding to incidents across the county, like an emergency response for mental health. 24/7 helpline. You can call or text 845-485-9700. It's all in the handout. In order to get access to those mental health professionals. And our stabilization center is unlike anything in the country. Under one roof, we have resources for those dealing with mental illness and those dealing with addiction. We don't always get it right. And I'll be the first to tell you we will never always get it right unless you get people out of the mix. But what I can tell you is that we strive every day to get it better. And we are saving lives. And last year, over 3,000 visits to the Stabilization Center. We continue to see that expand. One area that we know, people living with addiction, again, it is a mental health issue. It is an illness, and it needs to be treated as such. One of the things that we've expanded is our medication-assisted treatment. Matt, this is, I always do this. What do we administer? Methadone, thank you. I always lose it. We administer methadone and Suboxone, thank you, and Suboxone. So when I first told my mother 2 years ago, because I like to tell my mother things, that we were going to expand our methadone clinic, she said, that's where people go to get high, right? Now, I didn't realize that my mother didn't know. But what I will tell you is most people will respond that way. Wow, methadone clinic, like, you know, that's a little... Methadone allows individuals to achieve sobriety. It keeps them sober, and it allows them to function, and allows them to access a job or to function in their family. And what I tell people is the most powerful recovery tool is love. I know that sounds corny, but if I love somebody or something, it gives me the power, the ability, the hope, the desire to see straight. And so what we say is that this allows people to see through the fog of addiction to be and find worth. Because if we don't do that, we're going to lose. We're going to continue to lose. One of the programs that we administer that I'm very proud of, and if I asked 1,000 people in Dutchess County whether or not we would spend $1 on it, they would say no. But for pregnant moms living with addiction, we administer Suboxone. Now, first of all, you can be pregnant and be administered Suboxone, and you can bring that child to term, and you can have a child that's healthy. Now, why do we do that? Because we know that, in particular, women who are pregnant, who are living with addiction, many of whom feel absolutely worthless. But the most powerful way to help them find worth and stay on the road to recovery is to have them bring to life somebody or something that is going to love them unconditionally. And we found such great success with that. So from my perspective, if the goal is to save lives, the programs we have are working. And so little by little, we continue to expand both those for Matt, for those we know, meaning those in the system, and those we don't, which is one of the reasons we're training pharmacists and others to identify individuals living with and dealing with addiction. Secondly, we are focused on young people. Dutchess County's Path to Promise has been a comprehensive review of all the services available to all young people across Dutchess. That means from Little League to town-sponsored activities. I will admit, town of Fishkill has perhaps, town of East Fishkill, one of the most comprehensive recreation programs, and it's not because I really fear Mr. Green. Is that his name?
He's still around.
Is he? Can he hear me?
Probably.
Okay. I know you have a great recreation program, but it's from those kinds of services right on up to those that are administered by schools or churches. We've sort of identified everything. And we've said, how are we measuring success? Because every child deserves to be on a path toward their own defined success. And we know what it takes to be a successful child, right? We know the development stages, and we know the supports that need to exist. 9 times out of 10, it's family. But 1 time out of 10, it ain't. Something else. Ain't is not a word that my grandmother or anybody would want me to use, but nevertheless, there are other services and supports that are necessary. So we try, through this Path to Promise, we've tried to create sort of a measurement tool so that we can evaluate if we're going to spend your money, we need to know we're getting something in return or we shouldn't spend it. So that kids in particular are able to grow up, prevent perhaps addiction, but grow up healthy and achieve success. So we're focused on investing in early childhood development. We can identify those that are at risk prior to birth We know who they are, and we need to be able to connect them with help. There are those living in violence, those living in poverty that need access to certain help, whether it's private sector support or government support. We want to make sure we're being effective. We're bringing together service providers to work more in a coordinated way so the left hand and the right hand know what they're doing, and we're not tripping over one another. And the goal is to really engage the service providers, the partners throughout Dutchess County, to really help young people succeed without necessarily spending more money, but making sure what is spent is effective and efficient, and at the end of the day we're making progress to help young people. One initiative that I hope you know I'm very, very proud of is our Think Differently campaign. We launched it about 5 years ago. It is a genuine call to action to say to businesses, community, government, and individuals to change the way we think about those living with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Why? Because the last acceptable form of prejudice in America is the silent prejudice of low expectation. The thought that certain of us who feel we are abled look at those who are differently abled and assume they can or cannot achieve certain things. So our goal is to say to everybody, you have a right to a family that loves you, a community that supports you, and a good place to call home. And we need to change the way we deliver services, in particular in government, so that those with developmental intellectual disabilities have support and have access. And we change societally how we interact. This morning, I spoke to the ARC of Dutchess and talking to employers. Dutchess County administers Think Jobs through Think Ahead, where we're connecting now employers with those with disabilities. Yeah, there's programs to do that, but we say to businesses, just do it. Just expand what you do to access a workforce that, by the way, has the highest rate of unemployment than any population, those with disabilities. And you'll get a good quality worker who probably will be more loyal to you than any other. Think Ahead, our commitment and fund and partnership with Dutchess Community College to create education if you will, path, so that those who graduate from high school can move on to a college-level program with an intellectual developmental disability. And by the way, say to businesses that you may have a job requirement like a college degree. Some of these kids will never get a college degree. It's not that they're not capable of, it's just that there is no such thing for them. So creating a certification and a college-level education for them enables them to access employment and other opportunities. So Think Differently is a major push for us. 2 years ago, we hosted the Special Olympics New York Winter Games. First time ever Dutchess County hosted the games. We had more volunteers than any game they ever had, and I can tell you, because they say it when they're not around us, Dutchess County gave Special Olympics New York the best games they have ever experienced. Mostly because we embrace it all as part of this effort to accept people of different abilities. So this summer we're hosting the Special Olympics New York Summer Games, June 14th and 15th. I am the honorary chair. Now, the honorary chair is supposed to do relatively nothing but smile. That is not what I do, although I do like to smile. My job is to get volunteers. So, if you're looking for something to do on June 14th or June 15th, we need people to do everything from clapping to cleanup. I mean that truthfully. Visit specialolympicsny.org. You can sign up as a volunteer. We need people to clap and cheer for athletes. We need people to help set things up and take things down. So whatever your skill is, whatever your level of interest is, we need over 2,000 volunteers, and we are going to give them the best summer games they've ever had. Last of the things I want to cover is our commitment to parks in general. First, we believe parks are sort of central to community. They speak to our sense of place. East Fishkill has wonderful parks. Dutchess County has wonderful parks as well, and we're committed to making major investments through both county infrastructure and county parks. So let's talk a little bit about both the county parks and some of the projects you're going to see underway this year. First, it has become I tell people I have two favorite parks. It's like having kids, right? I love all of my parks the same, but on certain days, I love one park more than the other. It's not like having kids, is it? So on a good day, for different reasons, I love Dutchess Stadium, and I'll talk to you about that. And on other days, I like Quiet Cove, because Quiet Cove is perhaps one of the last riverfront access points in Dutchess County. So this is just north of Marist College, across from the old Hudson River Psych Center. If you've not been there, Quiet Cove Park, beautiful. We've expanded our waterfront deck, second waterfront deck, out into the Hudson River. You can enjoy a great opportunity just to be right out there on the water. This year we've opened a kayak launch with a kayak concession that's going to open up later this year. In fact, the kayak launch is ADA compliant, so accessible for those with disabilities, and we're making some upgrades to parking and other facilities on the Quiet Cove campus. My other favorite one is, of course, Dutchess Stadium, only because, one, I like baseball, and two, there's 5,000 people in one place at one time, and if you know me, you know that I like people. So we've made some accessibility enhancements at the stadium. Right now, if you go there, there's no seats. That is not a new plan to have people stand. It is, in fact, a seat replacement. We hadn't replaced those seats in 25 years. So you know, when you come over there, Pete, if you want, you can have a nice, comfortable chair. You'll be standing. Actually, I know your seat, and it won't be replaced. But if you know Dennis Zach, I've got to give him 2 cup holders so that he can have. So we're replacing the concrete, so you'll see some safety enhancements, and then the seats, brand new, being replaced there, thanks to the support of the county legislature, all in an effort to enhance facility safety and improve fan experience. We're also going to be making some other enhancements throughout the year, but those things will be done for opening day. Very excited that we're in the final stages of acquiring the old rail lines around the city and town of Poughkeepsie. These old rail lines will allow us to expand our rail trail network, so we'll be building a rail trail that connects to the Dutchess Rail Trail and the walkway over the Hudson throughout the city, so you could walk from what was the old Hudson River Psych Center, but now will be, in fact, a whole community being developed there, right down and through Marist College and to the walkway over the Hudson. This you probably know a little bit about, at least I hope you do, and we're very excited about this. So a year and a half ago, Dutchess County was given the opportunity to purchase Lake Walton. 240 acres right here in the town of East Fishkill, adjacent to the Dutchess Rail Trail. Some of you may remember it as an old summer vacation spot. But of course, over the years, it's been left untouched in many ways. And Dutchess County, 2 months ago, we got approval to purchase the land. Thanks to the legislature, we are purchasing the Lake Walton Preserve, Lake Walton, which will be the largest expansion of Dutchess County parks in 40 years. 40? 40. Yeah, I think it may be 50, but it's 40 years. 240 acres of a lake. We're going to dedicate it to Lake Walton Preserve, where we'll develop some nature trails, some access in and around the water feature, and then connection to the Dutchess Rail Trail. This park will be designed similar to Julie's Jungle as an active recreation space. This will be what's called a passive recreation space, but it'll be built and developed as a universally accessible location, meaning anybody of any ability will be able to enjoy it. The only other such park anywhere in the area that will look like this, although much larger, is one you're probably familiar with. Central Park in New York City, the most accessible passive recreation space probably in the country. But the goal here, without all of that, is to make sure that the Lake Walton property is accessible in many ways to anyone of every ability, and we're very excited about that enhancement. Is that the last slide? Look at that. So I took a little more time than I usually do, but I think we've covered it all. Those are sort of the broad areas. When you sat down, you probably got one of these, or you'll see one of these. This is the State of the County summary. There's other information here you might take a look at, but we wanted to cover sort of some of the highlights. Additionally, on your way in, I'm going to borrow yours just one second. This one. Or maybe it's not yours, but nevertheless, you may have seen, and you can pick up one of these. This is the budget in brief. This talks to the 2019 budget. Of course, this was released late last year. You can take a look at that as well. And with that, I'd be happy to answer some questions. I'll start with the one that was offered before. I can't get into all of it, but the truth of the matter is the only person the governor works for is the people of the state of New York. So in order to hold them accountable, you've got to elect state legislators who will make the decisions that you want. And in order to hold the governor accountable, you either have to elect him or elect somebody else to administer state government. But he doesn't work, well, he only works for me in that I am one of 18 million people or so that call the state of New York home. But most of what, well, state legislators work obviously to hold the administration in balance. Your question regarding abortion, Dutchess County doesn't have a relationship that funds those services. That is a New York State related issue, and of course the state of New York does fund services that include abortion, and I'll leave to you how to advocate one.
Repeat that again. New York State does fund?
New York State funds institutions through Medicaid and
Hospital, Planned Parenthood.
Well, I don't get into the specific locations because I don't know which hospitals provide that particular service, if you will, but the state of New York does pay for those services that include abortion. That is a New York State issue.
Instead of aborting a baby,
Yeah, but I'm not.
Why don't they give it to an orphanage?
Well, okay, so first, as much as I'd love to have a long conversation about this issue, it is not something that Dutchess County government is involved in.
Why not?
Well, no, we don't have a responsibility in that realm of things. We fund foster care, we fund services and support for families.
They should. Everybody should be together with this.
That is, I don't disagree with you, but the county government has no role nor responsibility in that arena. That is strictly a state and federal policy matter, and you'd have to advocate with
So
them.
the only way to get this guy out of office is that the people themselves have to get him out.
Yeah, it's an election. It happens once every 4 years. I happen to know about the last one. It didn't go. I came in second. No, I don't want to talk about. Let's stick to county government issues, but that's strictly a state matter. If you'd like, we can connect you with the state representatives. I'm not going to talk about those issues again. Now, let's talk to county government issues. Yes, go ahead.
Oh, God.
Well, this is a county. I'm sorry. It's a county government town hall, and I don't like to cross politics with government. I just don't. This is my job today is to answer questions regarding county government, not my political interests.
As an East Fishkill resident and a lover of the rail trail, I would love to know more about the Lake Walton Preserve and how I can find out more information and how I could get involved in helping with the planning.
Okay, great. That's a great question. Lauren just took the microphone from you, is also going to take your contact information. So what we've decided to do with Lake Walton, first I've given you sort of the broad consideration for the 240 acres, but we are going to establish a Friends of the Preserve. So we want residents who will help us develop the plan, implement the plan, and then sort of care for the property. So if you want to be a part of that, I'd welcome that. Claire Moran. What is Claire's name? Moran. Who's McHugh?
Jan McHugh.
Jan McHugh, Claire Moran. Claire and Jan, who both were involved with Julie's Jungle, have agreed also to help us develop Lake Walton Preserve, along with Rich Ross. Is that a name that you know? Rich Ross? Ross? Well, it's another fellow who was involved. Well, I'm doing this all from memory. What do you want from me? So we'll add you to that. In the next 60 days, we'll have finalized sort of the master plan for county parks, comprehensive plan, and then we'll launch the Friends of, and we'd love you to be a part of that. Okay, we'll put you to work. You're very welcome. Thank you. Other questions? Yes.
I know the word.
Oh, I apologize. You have to talk on one. It doesn't amplify you, but it puts you on television, and all 7 people.
I know that we are a Think Differently county, and I have attempted to reach people at the state level, but I think that you're going to be blindsided and think differently because of the changes Cuomo has made, and you as a county are also letting some of your adults who are transitioning from IEPs to ISPs, you're letting them down. I don't know if you're aware now, but when you transition from an IEP to an ISP, you must now go through what's called a CAS assessment.
Yes, yeah.
It's a very demeaning process.
It is.
And we were fortunate that a friend of ours went through it and lost services, so we were prepared for it. And when we had our CAS assessment, for those of you who don't know, somebody from New York City who has nothing to do with your family comes into your home for almost 3 hours and gruels you on how you care for your child.
Yeah.
It's not nice. You're also not allowed to talk to your child during it, but you may have an unpaid non-familial advocate sit next to your child. So we went through this CAS assessment, and we identified areas of need. When we went back and asked for it, the comment made to us, even though we have it in writing in the CAS assessment, was, we're not doing that.
Well, the state doesn't do a lot when it relates
but
to
they
those
put us
sorts
through, and now I have to go through, are you aware of the IM assessment?
I am. Let me just offer, I do think you know that I have a 15-year-old
I do, and that's
who
why
is
I'm mentioning it,
transitioning from
because-
IEP to ISP as she gets a little bit older, but yes, yeah.
And the
I'm very
IM
familiar.
assessment is 2,000 plus questions.
Oh, I know him.
I've already been through 2 hours of it, and I'm not even 1/3 of the way through. And I have to take another day off from work, or I will lose all of my services.
Yeah.
So, and this is coming from county people that are like, I'm sorry, Mrs. Cover, you need to take your day off from work and sit with my people.
It's this. What they're telling you has nothing to do with county government. None. We have no right, no say.
But is there any way you can get anybody? I have contacted our county people on the state level.
You mean the state people, not
yeah,
the
like
county,
Lawler.
Yeah.
Do you know he's never returned a phone call? And I assure you, anyone who knows me will tell you, I've called him over 20 times.
Yes, I'm going to have a hard time wrestling that microphone away from you.
Yes, you are.
So let me say this. I know how absolutely dehumanizing the system is. And by the way, every 4 years there's a new thing. You know, I mean, I don't. You know, there's you know, the front door. There's what is it? Self. Self-direction. Everybody's got a new idea.
But we're not allowed to self-direct.
No, that's my point. But I will say this broadly. New York, and I say this without political preference, I really do, because both parties are responsible for this. New York State over the last 20 years has diminished its commitment to those with developmental intellectual disabilities and has treated them as secondary citizens. The services we provide are accessing them are demoralizing and dehumanizing, and they make it that way. You know why?
So they can lower the numbers. I know of a child who was sitting home alone.
Well, that wasn't really a question. It was more of a rhetorical. It was more of a rhetorical question.
It bothers me.
Yeah.
I know kids who have transitioned from IEP to ISP. It is so grueling just to get your Medicaid waiver paperwork, and there is nobody to help them.
Yeah.
There are kids who are sitting home doing nothing in Dutchess County. Once they leave school, they're forgotten, and we are closing the programs for them.
We are not. New York State is.
Right, New York State is.
Yeah.
I agree, but then why aren't my state people supposedly representing me returning my phone calls? I've been to his office and left stickies on his door, and he doesn't return.
Okay, well, I can't tell you why you may not have gotten a return call, but
he's out there.
Okay, well, first, well, with all due respect, his son plays baseball, so I give him.
Cool,
No, it's not. It's not cool, but he gets to do that.
I agree.
But let me finish. No, it's my turn. But what you advocate for and what you need is as important as the time he gets to spend with his kids. So it's comparable, right? The two things I can offer you. One, I'm happy to advocate for you. I'm happy to have county government advocate for you specifically. But I can tell you broadly, we are making the case. We had a kid in the criminal justice system, and I have a 3-page letter that went off to OPWDD that said, you failed. You failed. And that can't happen. So we know the diminishment and the way in which the state's treating those with intellectual developmental disabilities. We know it. I will shout about it, and I will tell you, there are very few of me in New York State because I believe in it, not only for my own sake, but for what you experience. So all I can offer to you is that we're going to continue to fight, but we're also going to create what opportunities we can, which is why we say to businesses, create job opportunities, even if they're not through a program, because otherwise, waiting to get through a state-sponsored program, you may never get there. Housing. We've said to housing developers, we need you to create housing. By the way, New York State has a housing program for artists. Now, I don't mind starving artists, although I always find that starving artists are in Italy. I'm not sure why they were in France. They're always traveling somewhere. I don't mind that. But we have no such similar commitment to ensure that there's broad access to housing opportunities. So we say to our developers, if we're going to put money on the table to help develop affordable or accessible housing, I need you to commit to those living with disabilities. So we'll do everything we can within the that layer that is county government, and I promise you will advocate for the state level. And before you start talking again, you will. But before you leave today, I want to make sure, I know you, but let's make sure we have your contact. And I am more than happy to call Assemblyman Lawler or Senator Serino and say, you need to spend some time with her to understand what she's dealing with because she's not alone. And I'll make sure Tony Schiaffella participates in that if necessary.
I'd also like to volunteer if we're going to do any looking into it because it isn't just my own son. I get phone calls from parents that I know who I want to cry after listening to some of them. Because once those kids leave school, parents are making horrible choices.
Well, they're left. Parents are left to make. I mean, and the state's listen. In the state's determination, the Olmstead Act was criminal, closing workshops because they felt it was inappropriate. Well, listen. Everybody needs to have access to something that is their level of independence. And when you close, perhaps the strictest level, then there's a whole swath of people who are left with nothing. So I get it. Believe me, I do. But I will tell you, I sat with a kid in jail who, living on the autism spectrum, had a system fail him. And so I've seen it at its worst. I really have. And I am frightened for what the state does. So I'm more than happy to make the connection and advocate for you and others, okay?
And I'd like to volunteer my time.
I have no doubt that if we put you to work, you would not stop. I'll be happy to link you up with the service that we have. We also, by the way, contract with service providers to be advocates, so there may be a way through Abilities First or Taconic Research.
For Abilities First.
I did not.
Well, we have, but the state has cut the money and transferred the management and case management over to an agency.
I know. My daughter receives Ability First services, but I will tell you, Dutchess County has not cut anything. In fact, we've expanded that commitment.
They've now taken it and turned it over to somebody
Yeah.
that has nothing to do with Dutchess County and could care less.
I don't disagree. But state directed, so we'll fight on that. Yes, sir. Oh, I'm sorry. She's coming with a microphone. This is like Oprah.
Thank you, Lord.
And you get a car. Peter, you buying cars?
Nasser Mahmood, pharmacist, and live in Wappingers here. Lived in Dutchess County for the last 30 years. Raised 3 kids, and practicing Muslim. Have a mosque at the Myers Corner where you have been. Current situation, what is happening, Ramadan is starting Monday.
Yes.
And you know that there are 400 to 500 people every night at the mosque. Concerned with the security.
Yeah.
And any steps or help can be expected from the county and your government?
Yes. So let me answer specifically, and then I want to just at least expand slightly. Number one, Sheriff Anderson has made a commitment that any house of worship, and we've seen now violence committed against Muslim worshipers, Christians, and Jews across the country and the globe, period. And what has become and should be the most sacred places have become targets of horrific violence. And Sheriff Anderson has said to the community, if you believe that you are in need of additional security measures, they will provide that. So I do know in particular, because of the holy day that will be recognized and celebrated, that he is aware and his department is aware and there are several mosques in Dutchess County who will be in need of additional security. He has agreed to provide it. The only thing I will tell you is his position, and I tend to agree, is he wants you to be aware and sort of participate in that. In other words, his feeling is you just don't send police outside of a church or a mosque or a synagogue and sit there, because it may not be the message that you want to send. And we want you to some degree feel confident that that's the kind of security you want. But he has offered and provided over the course of certainly the last several years both marked and unmarked officers and vehicles for that purpose. And he is aware, and as I understand it, there are measures being taken to expand security at mosques.
Previously has not been provided.
Last year, and I apologize because it was either last year or the year before, there was a similar, there was an attack on a mosque, and he did move very quickly to provide those services. In fact, I think I came, and subsequent to that, he did. So his position is that. I will remind him and make sure that that's the case. And then he also works with local law enforcement. If your local police department, as I'm sure East Fishkill, not in this case, but East Fishkill would do the same and provide additional coverage. Now let me just say broadly though again, what we've experienced in this country is inexcusable. It just is. First of all, whatever your opinion is of someone else's faith is probably something you should keep to yourself. If they are assembling in peaceful means, they have a right to do so. And this country has always celebrated that. Government doesn't impose religion, nor does it expect people to worship in a particular way. And what we've seen across the country now are really that houses of worship have become targets. We can get a long conversation about security, safety, guns, but at the core of it is somebody chooses to take the life of somebody else in a place, and every place is sacred, but in a sacred place where people come together for the purposes of finding and communing with their divine providence, if you will. So from our perspective, no matter who you are, if we feel that there's a need to provide additional safety, we will. And the county, both through law enforcement and through our Human Rights Commission, will continue to educate and do outreach to the different faith communities. We believe in that firmly, you bet. Other questions? Yes, sir. Oh, wait for the microphone. Oh, look at that. You get the supervisor to bring the microphone.
The rail trail is one of Dutchess County's great recreational assets.
It is.
I know there's plans to extend the rail trail from Hopewell through Stormville into Putnam. Can you provide any update on those plans?
Yeah, before you leave, you're going to get a shovel. And we're
Okay, I'd be glad.
Get to work. So a couple things I'm glad that you mentioned. First of all, rail trails are universally seen as real good community and economic assets. In fact, there are employers all across the country that move jobs to locations that have rail trail and sort of pedestrian connection. So the fact that we have first two very successful rail trails, the Dutchess Rail Trail through East Fishkill, north into Poughkeepsie, and then the Harlem Valley Rail Trail from just north of Dover. I got it wrong the other day. What did I say? Did I say Wingdale? I forget where I said it started. But I got it wrong by about 50 feet. But nevertheless, the Harlem Valley Rail Trails, our oldest of two rail trails, we're actually now finalizing the connection into Columbia County. So we're doing that this year. There is an effort to also expand connectivity between the city of Beacon, the Beacon train station, all the way out to the Dutchess Rail Trail, although that will happen in stages. The first stage will be to create a parallel trail to the active, that line, is that the Maybrook line? That extends through there. So it's not actively used, it's called the Ghost Line. They use it once or twice a year. But our goal will be to create a parallel trail there to get you from Beacon to Fishkill, with the goal ultimately of getting from Beacon to East Fishkill. Now the Beacon location off of 9D is a parallel trail that they're trying to create, is that the Fjord Trail into Columbia County, Putnam County. And then you are correct. There is an effort that, in partnership with the state through the Empire Trail, to make a connection from East Fishkill, in essence, into Putnam County. That's probably a few years down the road. Okay? But this year we're going to complete the connection into Columbia on the Harlem Valley Rail Trail. We're going to design the parallel trail in Beacon, and we're going to take ownership of the trail in the city of Poughkeepsie to make the connection to the Dutchess Rail Trail. Got a lot of trails going on. Okay? Other questions? Yes. Oh, microphone's coming your way. Oh, she's got a script.
I just got notes.
Oh.
Hi, my name's Lorette Giardino. I'm going to give a little story in regard. When we collect sales tax, a percentage of it goes up to the Albany, percentage stays for the county, and a percentage goes to the town. In 2003, Dutchess County put a regressive tax through, bringing our tax rate up to 1.25. We are higher, the highest sales tax in the Hudson Valley. Westchester.
That's not by design, you know that. I would ask,
Okay, can
you're
I finish?
a candidate for office, so
Yes.
as far as I'm concerned, you can use your time to give speeches. But if
My
you don't
question
mind-
is why you
Yeah.
allow this regressive tax to continue.
Yes, $40 million.
Yeah, and that at the same time, in 2012, you did the formula to give money back to the towns
Yeah.
and changed it. So now East Fishkill, where
Gets
I
more.
live,
Gets more.
gets 1.2 less
No, it
than
doesn't.
it did before 2012.
No, well, you're wrong, and I'll explain why. So first, listen, I don't mind. Why don't we, if you don't mind? And I don't mean to be crude about it, but that's first of all the sales tax extension that occurred in 2003, and Brad Kendall was a member of the legislature. Was at the time meant to offset property tax increases, and in fact it did. And if you look at Dutchess County's property tax levy and the tax rate, that sales tax has funded enormous amounts of services, and I'll give you the list, and you tell me which ones you want to cut. I don't think you want to cut any. And in fact, your comment is contradictory, and I'll be very blunt about it. If you eliminate that 1/4% sales tax, it is worth $40 million in sales tax revenue. 18.5% goes to the towns and cities. How much money are you willing to take away from East Fishkill?
None.
Right. You just got rid of it. You just told me, why would I allow that sales tax to remain in effect? Let me finish. You made a point, and as a candidate for office, I like when people do this, but you're making two counter arguments. You can't say keep the money to the municipality but get rid of the sales tax. If you eliminate that 1/4%, it's a $40 million reduction in sales tax to Dutchess County, and it is a $8.5 million sales tax reduction to the towns like East Fishkill. You just stole the money from them. And then you went on to say that the formula that we created took money from the towns. You can't have it both ways. I mean, you can choose to, but you can't. So that's not accurate. So the reason we allow that sales tax, and I wouldn't be so curt if you didn't say it with such pleasure. But my point is, you're allowed to. But my point is that 1/4% sales tax funds those 30 cents on the dollar services. it offsets the 70 cents that we have to pay in property taxes to the state of New York. That $40 million funds 911 services, fire training, it funds mental health and drug addiction, it funds park advancement, it funds services for kids. Which one of those would you like me to cut? Because Dutchess County can't lose $40 million of revenue and not cut stuff. How many people would you like me to lay off to accommodate that? The answer is none. And so that will remain, and of that $40 million, we will give 18.5% to the municipalities. Now, I know Nick feels the same way, but I'd like to reinforce that. In 2012, I came into office with a $40 million budget gap. I took office, and this county didn't have the ability to pay its bills. So I said to the municipalities at the time, the second thing that was what happened at that time was the sales tax agreement, and I apologize for being lengthy, but I'd like to be informative. The sales tax agreement that allowed Dutchess County to collect sales tax had lapsed in 2005. What that means is that Dutchess couldn't take money in sales tax revenue and give it to anybody. The state law says, by the way, if we collect sales tax at the county level, we have to have a contract with the two cities, not with Nick, not with the town, not with anybody else, with the city of Beacon and the city of Poughkeepsie, because they have the right to assess their own sales tax. So at that time, I came into office knowing that this county didn't have that contractual relationship, which meant everybody would have lost everything. What would you have liked me to take away? None of that. So we went back to the towns and said, I have a $40 million budget gap. I've got a sales tax that's going to lapse because I don't have a sales tax agreement. And to make matters worse, the comptroller of the town, that the fellow who ran against me, he's now in jail, threatened to sue the county. Sue the county. You know who he is. And if he sued the county and won, we wouldn't have any sales tax money. So I said we've got to negotiate a contract. And then I said to the towns, if I don't come up with an agreement that sustains that revenue, I have to cut about $8 million. Now, I could be really crude and say that the state senator at the time had promised me a way of getting out of that, but he later reneged. But I won't say that. Instead, I will say that $8 million was a pretty hefty sum of money. And what we said to the municipalities, Nick wasn't supervisor, so it gives him the ability to complain about it today because he wasn't there then. But my point is, the supervisors and mayors all understood at the time that if we didn't settle a sales tax agreement, which instituted now a long-term relationship with the municipalities, we would all lost $8 or $9 million. And they didn't want to lose the core services like 911, like Dutchess County Planning. Those are services that we provide as shared services to municipalities. At the same time, they were paying for election costs, and we said, no, we'll pay for that too. We'll take that cost away from you. So we tried to create a relationship that said everybody's going to sacrifice a little, and at the end of the day, we're going to try to get you a better deal. Now, what I will tell you is, you have a better deal. You just haven't recouped it all yet. The better deal is the agreement that I came into office inheriting gave the overwhelming majority of the money to the two cities. Well, actually, the one city. And the big towns, the big towns like East Fishkill said, wait a minute, the cities don't create sales tax anymore. And it's true, they didn't create nearly as much. Why are we using an agreement that gives the majority of that money to them? We want our fair share. Well, I don't know about you. I've been married. I actually have been married twice, and this is the last time I intend to be married. And I can tell you that my wife and I disagree on a lot of things. And most of the time, the only way out of a disagreement is either for one of us to say, yeah, you're right, whether we mean it or not, or we compromise. I choose compromise. I said to the municipalities, like they were my partner in government, which is true, I need to lower the base. I'm the bad guy, make me the bad guy. But in order to save these services, I need to recapture $4.5 million of the $8 million. I'll come up with the other half. I just need you to help me with the first half. And then moving forward, this agreement distributes sales tax growth, not based on a formula written in the 1970s that gives the cities a larger share, but rather based on population, which actually gives the towns a larger share. And for the first time in a long time, we have gone now from basically flat sales tax receipts to 8.5% increase. If we see 8.5% increase last year, if we see 8.5% increase next year, you know who's going to be seeing a huge amount of money? East Fishkill. Why? Because the contract that you don't like, that we negotiated, gives them a larger share of the revenue. And sales tax, while it is regressive, does help us to minimize the impact of property taxes. And at the end of the day, New York State gives us two forms of revenue, sales tax or property tax. I'm not willing to raise either one of them. But I'm also not willing to cut mental health services and drug addiction services simply because somebody says I should undo what was done in 2003. Okay? Sorry. I am passionate about these things, and I apologize if I sounded at all rude, but that is the truth.
That's why I asked the question.
And what I will, well, that's why you started with the speech, but you asked the question. I'll give you, that's why you asked the question. You started with a speech. But I will say this to Nick, and I'll say it to everyone else. I'll have this conversation, and we can still disagree on it. And at the end of the day, we're going to work together to bring about solutions. But we can't go backwards. There is no going backwards. But I will tell you that the sales tax arrangement we have now provides the municipalities with the biggest population the opportunity to regain a lot of growth. And 4 years ago, I would never have said to anybody that we were going to see this kind of growth. But the truth of the matter is, economic growth is happening. $1 billion in new assessed valuation, millions in sales tax revenue. Whether it's helped everybody equally is certainly a debate worth having, but I can tell you that the resources we use, the measurements we use in county government, meaning job growth, unemployment rates, economic development, sales tax receipts, and assessed valuation, those things, and wage increases, all of those things add up to a positive direction. If 4 of them didn't, I'd argue with you, okay, maybe not, but all of them do. And so we are absolutely on the right path. We just have to continue to sort of nickel and dime our way back from where we started in 2012, which was in the throes of a great recession that could have very well been a depression. Thank you.
I'm glad not to have the elections cost this year.
Well, that's a good point. I mean, nobody, by the way, I think it's a good one, right? So prior to 2012, towns were paying for all election costs. So every election cost was paid for by you as local taxpayers. You couldn't shoulder that. No town should be responsible. So I came into office and said, as part of this arrangement, I'm going to take back some of the things that we push onto you, but you're going to let me recoup the $4 million. And again, I thought it was fair. We had a $40 million budget gap. I said to CSEA and county employees, I need you to help me find $4 million. I said to the county legislature, I need you to help me find $4 million. I said to the towns, I need you to help me find $4 million. That's 12. And then the balance I will get through efficiencies, reductions in services, or not reductions, excuse me, consolidation of departments. And then, by the way, the state of New York was going to make up some. That didn't come through, so we ultimately did. But all of those things combined to meaning everybody sacrificed to get through the hardest time. I lived with my grandparents across the street and down the road. They lived through the Depression. Their answer to most troubles were, we all have to sacrifice a little bit in order to get through it. And we all did. And Nick's point is, I embrace the reforms that Albany imposed, early voting, registration changes, access to poll sites, etc. But all that costs money. It's going to cost Dutchess County $700,000. That would have been his bill. It's our bill. And New York State came to the rescue. You know how much they're giving us to offset the cost they're imposing on us? $70,000. Isn't that nice of them? $700,000 in new expense. And I'll tell you this right now, $700,000 in new mandated expense, and I will still propose a budget that cuts your property taxes in 2020. What's else? What's next? Let's do firsts, and seconds second. So let me do a couple firsts, and then we'll get done.
Hi. Two quick things. One, I have a son that's in the Think Ahead program at Dutchess Community College, and today was the last day of his first year, and he is thriving because of it. It's a fantastic program. I know Dutchess Community College is starting to having some budget issues, and I'm just checking to see if you think that's a program that's going to be keep going in the future.
As long as I'm alive, it
Great.
will be.
That's fantastic news. And then second was, I don't know if many people know, but we about 8 weeks ago, Dutchess County was in the first time maybe not going to have a walk for autism, and the county executive found out about it, and Tony Scarfelli, and they directed ADS to come up with something and make the walk happen, which we did. And the most important part of it, I thought, was it happened, but we had over 140 kids from the county, all the local high schools, including for town supervisor. We had Coach Tom O'Hare and 25 of the football players there from John Jay, with other football players from all over that did a fantastic job, and it was a big success. We want to thank you and Tony Scarfelli.
And we'll keep at it, too. We'll get it bigger next year. We liked where it was. It's a good location. I do want to say that, though. So Think Ahead's been very successful. The college is dealing with some financial issues, mostly because of reduction in enrollment. And it's like anything else, just because you have a few less people participating in the classes doesn't necessarily mean all the costs come down. So they have a higher increase in costs and a shrinking enrollment. But the college is committed to Think Ahead. We are working on a relationship that will keep Think Ahead moving forward as a program. We think it's that valuable, so that'll continue. As far as the walk's concerned, I also want to say that. So if they're watching, it was remarkable to see everybody volunteer, and I can walk like a man. They had a nice singing group that was great, but to see the high school football players, these big burly guys, treating so many those living on the spectrum with respect and decency. They were there helping to set up. It was it's a testament to the fact that we've got quality kids. So no matter what you read in the newspaper, how negative things seem to get, we've got quality kids in this community, and they were all there, and it was really very, very, very special. Next year I might sing with them. I don't know. No, you won't come back. Any firsts first? Okay, so what we'll do is I'm going to end on your last question, and then I'm going to give you some follow-up contact information, and we'll call it a day. What's your last question?
Okay, my name is Angela.
Sure.
I'm a mother of 5 children. I don't need this.
You do, because you won't appear on the TV.
Oh, God.
Well,
Hi, my name is Angela Maria Teresa, okay? And I'm a mother of 5 children. I have 14 grandchildren. I've been living in Dutchess County for 30 years. Went to Dutchess Community College, transferred to Mount St. Mary, got a degree in teaching. What happened was I had 4 spine surgeries, bleeding for 10 hours. I was esophagus rupture. I became disabled. I was diagnosed now with a brain tumor. I have a growth here. I need a knee replacement. My husband passed 2 years ago, Salvatore Petrillo.
Yeah.
The last name is Petrillo.
Good Irish name.
And yeah, he helped build 9/11, Montevideo Hospital, Yankee Stadium, Einstein, all that stuff. Now my taxes went up a lot because he was a little bit older than me.
You've lost his...
And I'm younger than him. And you get that discount, the
senior,
STAR program,
yeah.
all that stuff. So now I have to wait till I'm 65 years old. The taxes went sky high.
Yeah.
A lot. I had to dish all my savings, over $6,000, whatever I had in the bank, to pay for this. Now I got to dish out again. I have very little left in the bank.
So,
and I'm very worried. I don't know what to do.
You live in East Fishkill?
I live in Fishkill.
You live in
the
Fishkill.
Town.
So what I would want to do is get your...
It's not that I don't want to go to work. I want to do something, but I have a lot of issues going on.
Well, 2 things. One, our Workforce Investment Board provides opportunity for those who are living with certain what I'll call difficulties, accessing particular employment options. So I'd like to connect you with our Workforce Investment Board.
Yeah.
Secondly, though, we'll take your contact information. You still may qualify for certain assessment reductions and tax exemptions. Let's make sure that you are. The state changed the STAR exemption recently, which requires you to fill out other paperwork, of course. It's sort of like, we hope you don't do that so we don't have to give you the exemption, but we'll work with you to make sure
I need help filling those things out because I hit my head. I also have a cognitive short-term memory thing going.
Well, that's why I had to remember your question. Otherwise, we wouldn't have...
Another thing I want to ask you, don't get cute.
No, I was being somewhat respectful.
That's fine. I'm old enough to be a mother. But another thing I want to ask you, any of my taxes go for abortion? This nice, sweet lady said no, right?
Yes,
Rachel?
right, no.
No?
Dutchess County doesn't.
I was just concerned about that.
No, Dutchess County doesn't. But let's get your contact information. Lauren will do that.
And I want to ask you something else which is very, very important.
Let's do that let's do it when it's over, okay? I'll stay with you.
My granddaughter's been a victim of sex trafficking.
Well, we can connect you with the
That's
appropriate...
another thing.
Yes, let's not talk about that in...
I'm very worried about
Okay.
her. I have a lot of stuff going on.
So let's get your contact. Let's make sure that you get the support, and we'll connect you with the right folks to get some help, okay? And you and I are going to follow up. I want to make sure we get your contact. I know you, but I want to make sure we get your contact so that we can coordinate with... No, you're not at all. No, you're passionate about what you care about, but I want to make that connection. I know that she had to sneak out, but we'll connect her with Lake Walton Preserve. So the last thing I want to say to you is on your way out, please feel free to take the handouts, but in the handouts are contact information. If you have questions you didn't get to ask and something comes to you on the way home, feel free to email or call our offices. We'll be happy to respond to you. Additionally, if you're on social media, and based on what I know, 90% of you are, follow Dutchess County Government on Facebook or Twitter. It's not because we want to shout things at you, but most of the time, in order to get information out quickly, in particular in emergencies, Twitter and Facebook are the way we do that. I also have a policy that I consider social media social. So if you ask a question, we answer the question. I mean, I hate elected officials that have social media and somebody says, asks a question, they don't respond. That's not very social. So if you have a question or some information, you can go online, you can follow us, you can certainly comment, and we'll respond to you. And I think that's about it. So enjoy your day. Thanks very much.